Yeah.
And we are live. So after nearly 3 months of not even doing debates on my own channel or whatever, I am joined with someone who I have now debated 4 times, this being the fourth. Her name is the Effeminate Degenerate, aka Lapis. We're here to have a conversation, hopefully a cordial one, about immigration. This is a topic that has been usually when you look at what's like the most controversial topic of the year. Last year it was about the far right, Antifa and whatnot. This year it's that same thing, but it's also immigration and how that's being handled in the United States. Now, for Lapis's fans, if they don't know who I am, I'm S-Man. You can call me S or whatever. I don't really care. I just have my own slant on politics. I don't follow the common trends. I can be a trailblazer when that's appropriate, and generally what I do here, I just talk about whatever is on my mind, and usually people will agree, sometimes not so respectfully, but that's to be expected on a place like YouTube. Since it's been quite a while since I've had Lapis on here, and I've gained a number of subs since then, would you care to introduce yourself again, just for the record?
Oh, sure. So, hi, I am the Effeminate Degenerate. I am a feminist, socialist, far leftist, cultural Marxist, millennial SJW, pretty much everything the internet hates. But I try to be a fun person and nice to people who I disagree with.
Yes. That introduction was better than mine, hands down. Okay. Well, for context, for why we chose this topic was I tweeted something, and Lapis here,
yeah,
she was kind of like concerned, so we decided that's what we would cover today. So I'm going to start my timer right now. All right. So my position on immigration is that I have a strong hatred and dislike for people who do not like immigrants and who dislike legal immigration. Like there are people, I think Jeff Sessions hates both illegal and legal immigration. I'm going to have to double check that. I'm fine with immigrants coming to my country. Even though I hate Ronald Reagan with a passion, I do agree that, to me it does show some patriotism if you want to come to America to have a better life for yourself. I am of the position, I've had this position for a long time, that it is perfectly fine to come to the United States, but that if you're going to do so, you'd be shooting yourself in the foot if you don't come with the nation's consent. You try to enter illegally, as honestly it does create, I don't know if this anxiety or some, like, it's gonna wear down on you. For instance, imagine you come to the United States, or any country really. You have to hide the fact you're even in the country because they will deport you. You can't call the police if someone tries to attack you. If you are hurt, you're screwed, essentially. You might die, or you're going to be in a bad state of affairs. And that it's not worth that risk. It would be better to come legally. Now, I will absolutely say, yes, it is truly important that we have immigration reform. I don't think anyone in their right mind, even as someone like Sparky, he'll say, yeah, we do need immigration reform. I don't even think Republicans are going to disagree that we need immigration reform. Mm-hmm. With the part of I of course make exceptions. I think we have to have exceptions in certain cases, especially in the topic of immigration. I am absolutely fine with having refugees come to the United States due to really any persecution, like political, religious. It's due to, like, if you're gay or something. Absolutely, I have no problem with that. Mm-hmm. In times of war and natural disaster, honestly, I again have no problem. Those are my exceptions. I can't think of any off the top of my head. There's probably others, but those are the ones I can name. But generally, that is my position. One thing I do want to make clear is, obviously, and I hate having to make this a point, but obviously just because one does oppose illegal immigration, like, of course, they'll make exceptions with legal immigration, and it's, of course, I know I won't have enough time to explain this part, explain that in full, but it's not like race based. Like my type of what would make someone worthy to come to the country is not really race based at all.
Mm-hmm.
Call it colorblind, call it what you want. That's just my general position. I have 2 minutes left, and I think I will conserve that time.
Okay. Great. So that's a lot of good stuff. Thank you for that, S-Man. I do agree with a lot of what you said there. I agree that immigration. I have no problem with legal immigration. I have a sharp dislike of people who are anti-immigrant. However, when it comes to illegal immigration, I agree that illegal immigration is a bad thing, which is why I kind of want to get rid of the idea of illegal immigration entirely. And that's why I think that there needs to be greater amnesty. There needs to be amnesty for the about like the 12 million undocumented people living in the United States and the people who are living in my own country, Canada. I also think that there needs to be a stronger, that the way the United States is handling undocumented immigration right now is very, very bad. I really dislike the policy of border separation, where if a family is detained at the border, they are separated. The children are separated from their parents. I think that it's a huge, it's a terrible thing that there is there was even though that Trump put a stop to this policy with the executive order, there's still over 2,000 children who are separated from their parents. And they're having trouble really reuniting them. And to me, this is a really big problem. But not only that, I think that in general, there needs to be a shift in how we look at immigration. And I think that the current model of trying to criminalize crossing a border is not necessarily a very effective one. And it's costing actually the United States quite a lot of money. So you see, where are we here? Yes, no, not that one. Where are we? Yes, here we go. So this is the United States spent over the 26 years, and this is from 2013, over $187 billion on federal immigration enforcement. So just not only like stopping people at the border, but tracking them down through agencies like ICE. And to me, this is a big problem. I think that there needs to be amnesty for these people, so the Americans can, so there can be a huge amount of money that can be saved and spent on better things, as opposed to just needlessly criminalizing something that really isn't that bad, like just crossing a border. And that's not to say I don't believe in border security entirely. Like, obviously, when someone comes to the border, you have to, there should be someone there. There should be someone to check to see if they are bringing firearms or explosives or something into the country that shouldn't be there. That's obviously important. However, I think that the current policy is just not working. And there's quite a lot of evidence to suggest that ICE is a big part of why that policy isn't working. So right now, ICE, which is a department which is tasked solely with tracking down people inside the United States after they've already crossed the border and trying to get them deported. So what ICE is doing is using something called stingrays to track and locate cell phones by mimicking a real tower. And not only do they catch the person who they think is an undocumented immigrant, but they also catch, all the bystanders in the surrounding area. So that's a huge violation of rights. And here's another thing. There is apparently, this is the last estimate, and the number has probably only grown since then. There is apparently about over 12 million undocumented people living in the United States. Now, someone who is, more pro-prohibition of undocumented immigrants might say, look, okay, that means we have to spend even more on enforcing our immigration laws, even more tracking down these people. But to me, that just seems like a giant waste of money. Like, it seems like in a strange way, it's similar to the situation going on with marijuana. You're never going to be able to spend enough to track down all these people, and you're just wasting huge amounts of money while creating these government agencies that have all these invasive powers to look into citizens' private lives and to tear them from their and to tear families apart. For what? Like it just seems so unnecessary when the solution is quite obvious. Just present these people with amnesty. And I think that that it really will not only save the United States tons of money, but also be a much more humane solution for all these people. Okay, thank you.
All right, that's the end of your statement?
Yeah. Now,
all right. Okay, so now I'm not a very fast writer, but I have jotted down a good chunk of your points here. All right, so like I said, I don't disagree with legal immigration. Amnesty, on that point, I don't disagree with amnesty. For someone like Reagan, who gave amnesty to 3 million people, I didn't disagree with that. Honestly, I don't. Okay, here's the thing. I don't view immigration like just crossing a border illegally. I don't view that as like on par with sexual assault. I just generally think it's not a good idea. But yes, amnesty I don't disagree with. The border separation policy. Okay, now the tweet that started this conversation was I posted something, and I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was something about that we separate. Like, for instance, if Lapis had a daughter and and Lapis was arrested for car theft, she and her daughter are going to be separated. And I can't remember exactly what you said in response to that. Now, I will say that, I'd put the kids in foster care. Now, I wouldn't really do this family separation policy. I'd just put the kids, or if we do separate them, the kids go in foster care. There was images in 2014 of kids going in cages that I didn't agree with. I think that it is counterproductive, and I do think it does cause some traumatizing effects to those kids. I'd have to go and find if there's any data out there that would back that up. When it comes to criminalizing immigrants, in terms of the 2,000 kids that are separated currently, like it was either you said they were lost or they couldn't find the kids or something. I think there was a case where the kids were lost. Like ICE couldn't find them. That I did have a problem with, and that is something I've never agreed with. Honestly, ICE I do think is a problem in terms of they seem like a secret police, a Gestapo, if you will. I am against warrantless spying. I'm assuming in that instance you were talking about warrantless spying.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was declared unconstitutional, I believe, under the Fourth Amendment recently. I'd have to go back and find that later. Like I said, I don't disagree. What am I saying? I disagree with tracking people without a warrant. I do think that these like hardcore, like I'm not even hardcore with immigration, to be completely honest, but I think amnesty would save us money. However, I think a condition with amnesty is that they'd have to get a job or else no government benefits. With illegal immigrants, no welfare benefits. If they do come here legally, I'd say they would absolutely deserve those. Another thing which I just lost that point in my head as I was trying to remember another thing you had said or something I thought you had said earlier, but that escaped my head. I just had a blank check. So yes, I do remember. Okay, full disclaimer, I am not endorsing the idea of building a wall. I think it is not worth it. I think that in the terms of building it, whoever Trump's successor would be if the wall is actually built, which I got news for everyone, it's probably not. Who's to say that person's not going to tear the wall down? If we have enough money to waste throwing at a wall, even though maybe there could be a debate as to if it is wasteful, why not put it towards other things like infrastructure? Now, with the money we've spent to deport illegal immigrants, do you believe that maybe if we did build this wall, let's say it actually was built and it's not torn down, do you think it could at least it'd be fiscally responsible or it'd be cheaper than just consistently deporting these people? But I also want to expand on the amnesty thing. For instance, I think there would be really no point in not giving those immigrants amnesty. Let's say you entered the country 30 years ago and you were successful in not getting caught. After 30 years, it's not really a crime. So maybe a fine and some community service just give them amnesty. But that's at least generally how I'd approach it. But in terms of terminally ill people, they would get amnesty if they did come here illegally, considering they're literally going to die. So, but that's at least just how I come from the position. And I have about roughly 4.5 minutes left in what you described it as a 8-minute rebuttal perspective. So I will conserve the last 4 minutes 17 seconds.
Okay. Just a second there. There's lots to go over. So
sorry, I don't mean to talk a lot.
It's fine. It's fine. Just let me set my timer because I was thinking that you were going to go a bit longer. So in regards to what you said about the border separation policy, I don't think that crossing the border is necessary without going through the proper channels is necessarily a crime that warrants children being taken away. Like something like serial abuse, like constantly hitting them, like or sexual abuse or something like that, or even like an assault against the child. I think that is a cause to take the child away. However, just trying to make your a better life for yourself in another country is not really a good reason to take children away from their parents. And it is a very traumatic thing. Like it's very well documented that it's trying to. But not only that, I want to help your audience gain a bit of empathy for why people are leaving in the first place. Why there is this crisis. Just a second here.
It's all right.
God, where did I put it? Sorry, I have so many links up here. Yes. So this is the average homicide rate in Latin America. Okay. As you can see, it is like more than 3 times the world's average. And if we look at a graph, if we look at homicides in Central America, we can see that Central America has one of the worst homicide rates in the world. Like, sorry, this is the wrong one. Where are we here? Yes, here we go. Like countries like El Salvador, Honduras, Jamaica, Guatemala, Mexico, like all of these countries have an extremely high homicide rate. So it makes sense as to why these people are fleeing from that sort of violence, why they're trying to escape this, this devastation that's happening to them and happening to their countries, because of the drug war. And I think if instead of like spending all this money on like pointlessly tracking down these families and pushing them back and deporting them, instead that money could be much better spent helping to rebuild these countries and also saving to invest in America itself. Secondly, the point you made about the wall is not a very good idea because contrary to popular conception, most border crossings are not, like that's not the primary way illegal immigration or undocumented immigration happens in the United States. So I want to get the actual numbers for you right here so you can see it. But I do remember that illegal immigration isn't mainly from the border, and that this border wall is not necessarily a great preventative measure, because all you've done is presented a obstacle to people trying to leave Latin America. You have not fixed the reason why they wanted to leave in the first place, and you haven't made like even if the majority of people were crossing from over the border, it's a band-aid solution. It doesn't go at the systematic problems in Latin America, which is gang violence fueled by the drug war, which is corruption, which is, kind of these crony governments that are being supported by the United States. And I think if there was more of a if there was more of an honest relationship between the United States and the countries of Latin America, and if there was an end to the drug war, and if there was amnesty for these people, and a human treatment for them, as opposed to just these inhumane deportations and this nasty policy where we see children locked up in jail cells, and there's been footage of them crying in there, just constantly miserable, while people back in America, on like say Fox News say, oh well, they're just in summer camp. Why do the Democrats care? This is just a summer camp. I've never known a summer camp where you can't actually leave with wire walls and where you can't call your parents. Well, I mean that they can't call their parents, but that's beside the point. Sorry, I do isn't mainly over the border. Sorry, I do just want to.
It's fine. You got less than 2 3/4 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. This is from the Cato Institute, which is normally an institute I disagree with quite a bit, but let's see.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? I'll concede my time, and while we're doing the going through the comments, I'll find that for you. Okay.
Okay. So all right. So you gave your rebuttal perspective. Actually, I gave my rebuttal perspective, and then you gave your rebuttal perspective. So if it is time to look at the chat, and then if you don't mind, I did jot down what you said after that.
Yeah, sure. This is the back and forth period, I think now.
Okay. So I'm just gonna quickly look at the chat.
Okay, sure.
Just quickly. Okay. So Boomer says hi. He says hi, Queen. Yes, it is. Says Red Feather 1. Building a wall is cheaper, and like I said, everybody, I don't really endorse the idea of building a wall. I'm gonna get into that as soon as Okay, so these comments I can't honestly take all that seriously. So
yeah,
I'm just gonna actually just brush that off, and I'm just gonna deal with what Lapis just said. Okay. You said crossing the border without consent, and I'm roughly quoting here, crossing the border without consent does not really equal taking kids away or making it justified. Now, like I said, I don't really agree with the child separation policy. I would propose that, I would see, okay, so if let's say we can't, I better actually put the timer on for me. My bad, 5 minutes.
Oh no,
okay.
No. This is just the open discussion period.
Oh, the open discussion period. Okay, so yeah, I would say that if we find someone who, like, let's say you and I stopped a mom and her kids, or a dad and his kids, or whatever at the border, I would say let's try and find where they came from and find their circumstances, and honestly, and see what's going on, see the situation. Like if let's say you came from El Salvador, and let's say you're trying to escape gangs and violence. Like I said, in that case, and like I mentioned earlier, in times of war, natural disasters, any persecution, or where life is the place is uninhabitable, and I think you can argue that certain countries in Latin and South America or Central America are uninhabitable, I would give amnesty. So you're not really going to find all that much of disagreement with me. Taking kids away equaling trauma, I don't disagree with that. So that's why, like I said, I don't really endorse or agree with the child separation policy. Central America having a bad homicide rate, that's honestly just a historical fact. There's no disagreeing there. Same with it being the case in Latin America. Yes, I would rather, if people find illegal immigrants and their kids, the how we handle them shouldn't be let's deport them, let's think of them as subhuman. It should be to find what are we supposed to do with them in terms of handling people who come to the country. If they can prove, which I think it'd be pretty easy to prove, political persecution or any persecution really, natural disaster or war, or if there's like a severe amount of crime and the place is uninhabitable due to that, I think that is more than a burden of proof to say, yes, you are here because your very life depends on it. That I would say that would be my grounds for amnesty. Same with those who came and they were able to stay for 30 years and no one caught them till then. Um, like I said, I didn't endorse the border policy. So with the other means of entering the country, like you could enter on water or through the Canadian border, which, well,
Hmm.
that's if you're from Canada. And fun fact, everybody, I've seen pictures of the border where there's actually no fencing. You could literally just
Yeah,
walk across.
it's just like a green field at some areas.
Upstate New York, that's where I found out about it after those two inmates escaped. Um, fix not putting a band-aid on the issues. That is something I do not disagree with. I do believe that we should be kind of helpful with other nations. The drug war is a problem, and I think that is what is causing this crisis. That's why we need to have a like I always say, our foreign policy, and I tie this in, so this is not irrelevant. If we don't want illegals, or I'll just say in quotes illegals or refugees, we should have a foreign policy that doesn't mean that they end up having to run to us to outrun our bombs. Um, with corruption in the drug war, like I said, that is a problem. And the last point I checked, amnesty. Yeah, that I don't disagree with. Now with empathy for immigrants, like I said, I also do not disagree because the problem, the empathy is something that is important. You
Yeah,
know, just because you're not from my country, like of course Lapis is not from my country. I
yeah.
still have empathy for her. Even if she came illegally, I would have empathy for her. Even if I didn't know her, I'd still have empathy for her. Same with same with anybody. If they come from the country, it's like I will empathize. I want to know, and I think we should always be looking to know, why did you come here? What was your purpose? Try and find out the context of the situation rather than deport first, ask questions later.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of what you said. So it doesn't seem like we disagree too much on immigration. The only thing really seems to be the whole illegal part. I guess is that I don't necessarily like. I think that like illegal in terms of illegal as into immigration is just a full term, like talking about illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, because I think it does kind of it prohibits empathy. It's a term which reduces the amount of empathy you can have for people when you hear about them. Like,
Alien?
I think it does. Like when we think of a thief, we don't think of an illegal person. It's only with immigration that someone becomes illegal through the crime, whether you think it's crime. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Okay.
That they're committing. Like it's only through that. That's my issue, and it becomes even worse when it becomes like illegal alien or like and like the Republicans start to use like even more like aggressive terms to refer to these immigrants, and it seems unhelpful. It seems unhelpful to thinking like it seems to be designed to
Well,
dehumanize them, to make
yeah,
them like cockroaches.
yeah. Yes, yeah. The term, like I've always found the term illegal alien, especially when they put the emphasis on alien, you know, it did sound like they did come from a place of tinged racism. Like, obviously, I'm not going to call a thief an alien. I'm not going to call a murderer or a rapist an alien. Like, I've always found the term to be kind of cringeworthy whenever someone would use the term alien.
Yeah.
I'm going to Google the definition of alien rather quickly, and if they won't pop up movies, I can actually get back to this. Alien definition. By definition, the adjective is belonging to a foreign country or nation, and the noun is a foreigner, especially when it was not a naturalized citizen of the country where they are living. So while you could say, yes, someone can be an alien, the context and the connotation in which it is applied to someone does seem dehumanizing, and that's why I prefer, semantics aside, I prefer, instead of using alien, we can use immigrant or I use the term fresh citizen. Like if you moved to this country, I would not call you an alien. I'd call you a fresh citizen or a new citizen or whatever. The synonyms are
Yeah.
foreigner, non-native, immigrant, emigrant, or emigre, which it's hard to determine those two things. And
Like of all the terms, like it's weird because immigrant and emigre have like very like kind of neutral connotations,
yeah,
whereas alien has like a really like ooh I'm scared, like oh my god, like it's like we're being invaded. It's like It's like the invasion of the body snatchers or something.
Yeah, that's why it's like people can call me politically correct all they want, but I don't really care. Um, oh Lord, fucking Sparky.
Oh, what's happening in the chat?
Sparky says they're called illegal, not illegal, excuse me. They are called aliens because they aren't residents. Well, I can see that. Let's see.
And I mean,
Then
like, some of them have been residents for like a very long time, like 40, 50 years. Like, that's hardly very alien. Would you refer to a tourist as an alien? They came here for like a week or so, but they're not a resident. But that doesn't necessarily make them an alien. It seems like an unhelpful term. Like,
yeah,
imagine if like some French tourist came by and like, excuse me, can you show me where in Salt Lake City I can find this and this restaurant? And you said, get out of here, you alien. Like, what kind of image of America does that create?
not a healthy one, and that was an awesome French impression you did there. So Sparky also says I prefer to call them illegal invaders. Well, I'm just going to assume you're being sarcastic, and I'm going to brush that off, Sparky. And I can tell JJ is being a troll right now, so.
Yeah. Like, what kind of invader like works for lower wages than the average citizen? And quite a lot of these undocumented people actually, surprisingly enough, pay their taxes. Like,
Yeah.
even though they live in countries that are actively trying to deport them through their false social security numbers, they actually do. A lot of them do pay taxes. I found this to be quite interesting.
Same.
So where are we?
Yeah, like I'm gonna present you there, but yeah, here's the thing. That's kind of a reason why I'm fine with amnesty is the fact that they're gonna if they're as long as they're gonna be tax paying, then honestly, that's all that really.
Mm-hmm.
That sorry, I thought you dropped. Oh, I thought you cut out for a sec, but okay. But yeah, that's just
No.
my yeah.
Sorry. No, I'm just trying to find the exact one that I was. Yeah. So apparently, like, they contribute like $11 billion a year to Social Security alone, and like, this is where we get this. I always like to check the sources. Unfortunately, like, I couldn't actually access the link itself because I don't have access to the Seattle Times. But if you do, you can check the source on that. So
I don't.
Yeah.
So
but I found it interesting. Like, people always present these undocumented people as like leeches, like evil. But, you know, so many of them are already paying taxes. So many of them are already contributing to society.
Well, yeah.
And
yeah, like here's the thing, right? If they're paying taxes and being contributing members of society, that is what makes me say, you know, like, to me, it's like kind of like, to me, what proves yourself is what you do once you're here. Like, if you are a tax-paying citizen, you're basically doing what I'm doing. You have a job, you go to it, and you take care of the responsibilities you got. To me, that makes me want to say, you know, offer them amnesty or citizenship. And like I should have mentioned earlier, it is too complicated right now to become a citizen. Like one guy, I think it took him 30 years to become a citizen, and I was appalled. I thought that process should have taken less than that. I think even 10 years is ridiculous. But with the view of illegal immigrants and immigrants just in general, I want to repaint the image. So rather than saying like, oh, calling them aliens or just painting them as a stereotype, like usually when I was younger, when people would say illegal immigrant, it was pretty obvious they were talking about Mexicans, as that they would portray them as just these rapists, these thieves, kind of like this stuff before Donald Trump started to say it. But yeah, that's just generally my attitude about this type of thing is, you know, is just empathy. Like in a world where empathy is a foreign concept. Okay, the chat is blowing up a little bit, and I'm already starting to find some parts here. Okay, so some random geek says you are basically saying they are the, in quotes, enemy if you're calling them invaders, which. Wow, this is the first time I've agreed with Geek in nearly 6 months. Yes, I do not believe they're enemies. I don't believe they're enemies. A tourist leaves, Sparky says, which is, I think, in response to something you said. Then somebody visiting isn't trying to mooch off the system, Red Feather 1 says. Then JJ says, there's this thing called visas. And then Sparky says if someone enters illegally, they don't deserve amnesty. They deserve a trip to the other side of the border, which is costing us money, Sparky. And I think Lap has thoroughly debunked that argument that the wall would save us money. And honestly, like I said, I would be, first of all, if I got rid of ICE, like, first of all, I think maybe it is a good idea considering they are like a Gestapo. But Sparky then says it's simple: follow the rule of law or leave. Some laws I think should be changed or relaxed. And then some random geek. My God, twice in a row, geek is right. Make it easy for someone to be a citizen. Simplify the process. And Sparky says, "I'm all for immigration." So Sparky's right there, and geek is right twice in a row, which is like shocking. JJ agrees with me, and then Sparky says ICE is a good thing, which, like, here's the thing, right? I also want to make this clear, because I'm afraid a lot of people on your side are not going to be able to understand this.
Mm.
My views on illegal immigrants is just because they're illegal doesn't mean it doesn't mean that, like, treating them ethically goes out the window. Like, for instance, let's say I found an illegal immigrant in my neighborhood. My attitude wouldn't be I'm being all patriotic by having them thrown out of the country. Because, like we said in our first debate, police brutality is a problem. The brutality of ICE with the reports of sexual battery is a problem. Those things, that's what I'm afraid of. So it's like, you know, especially if they're like a productive member of society, it's like there's no point in reporting you. Same thing if I found you with weed in Mormon land, I wouldn't report you. I'd probably just say go you. But yeah, that's just generally a given here. You actually have to enforce immigration laws. No borders, no nation, Sparky says. Well, I would enforce immigration laws, obviously, but I wouldn't be as heavy-handed as the Trump administration is with the zero-tolerance policy, or this thing with, it's like separating children. It's like,
yeah,
I think there is a responsibility if you're going to separate the kids. What is so difficult about reuniting the kids with the parents? Like, I don't see the problem with that. Now, the image, if I can find it, which Lapis, this is what got me and her into the. Geek says he can imagine a world without borders, and Geek, the only world that's in is in your dreams, buddy. Okay, now I will go to my own Twitter to find that image.
Let's think about it this way. It depends on what you mean by the border. Like, the United States has state borders, and these, I think, are not necessarily so bad, because it's a very helpful way to catch criminals. If you look at most serial killers, the way they've been caught is crossing state borders.
Yes.
Illegally, which I think, like, that's not so bad to have a policy of, like, stopping people. Wait, are you supposed to be crossing? Wait, you're not. Like, wait, actually, you're a criminal. Like, wow, this is terrible. However, I think it's also a bit silly to say that we necessarily need to have, like, a militarized border or there is no country. Like, do all the countries in the European Union, have they ceased to exist?
Yeah, that's a good point. Honestly, the whole Brexit is I don't know enough about it to say anything, but honestly, like I'm gonna. Jesus Christ! I'm sorry.
Forgot to. That's startled me. Another timer because.
Yeah, but here's here's the image that I tweeted, which I don't know why the hell I just didn't retweet it, but this is the tweet in question that got this whole conversation rolling. After Lapis saw this image, she was like, "Yo, do you believe this?" And there were some other images or tweets I'd retweeted where I explained that I can fundamentally agree with someone. I can think, okay, I see where you come from, but I think there's a bit of a problem. But okay, so she says the conservative Latina, which is ironic when they bitch about identity politics, but I digress. In America, we take children away from parents that make bad decisions every day. And, well, yes, except we put them in foster care, not in those cages, which when we did that under the Obama administration.
Yeah.
When someone chooses... Yeah, there's been claims that those pictures were solely from the Obama administration, but I think that's going to need evidence there. When someone chooses to break the law, they are held accountable, put in jail, and separated from their family. Why do illegal aliens get to be the exception to the rule? Why do they get a free pass? Now, I wouldn't say that. I mean, first of all, I would treat illegal immigrants the same as people who are citizens. I wouldn't think of them as inferior to me just because they're not born here. If you're just an adult and you came with no children, I would say maybe it'd be better to philosophically maybe immediately deport them, but since I think the Constitution says they have actually constitutional rights, it would be important to recognize that and have a due process, but speed it up. And why do? And I don't think people are making an exception or rule. They just think the way in which they're separated and the way that they are treated is unfair. And just because someone is an illegal immigrant doesn't mean that mistreating them suddenly becomes justified.
Yeah.
Majority of children separated from their quote-unquote parents are actually separated from their traffickers. And Red Feather once says, okay, so let's talk about the law in Canada where children get to be taken from their parents if their parents misgender them. Does this make sense? Well, I don't know enough about.
True.
I didn't even know. I not paid attention to foreign affairs for a while.
Is if they abuse their children, not just misgender them. It's for gay children as well. If the parent starts beating up their child for being gay, they're taken away in Canada. Americans just listen to Jordan Peterson and think that everything he says about Canadian laws are true, but he lies all the time. This is way off topic.
Yeah, that is. Sorry I haven't read that. And Sparky makes a claim, which if you can provide a source, I'll entertain it. He says 80% of female children found on the border have been sexually molested. Which I'm going to need a source for that, because I think 80% is a stretch. Maybe it is a case in a few. That's why it's like I said, if we found some illegal immigrants, I want to know what's going on, why they're here, and I want to know if it's their kids or if they kidnap someone's kids. Find out the origin. I think there can be little debate about whether or not it's a good idea to find out the story, why they came here. Which, kind of like our first debate, I thought there'd be more disagreement than there was on the topic. I mean, we do disagree on everything. And we've kind of spent the 15 minutes both addressing the chat and having an open discussion. Yeah. But honestly, there doesn't seem to be all that much disagreement on the topic. There's mostly agreement in terms of empathy and things like that. Just that's the thing. That's a problem I do disagree with a lot of conservatives on immigration, is they do tend to dehumanize people who are not citizens, because I don't even know what the majority. I'd have to really delve into the crime statistics, but even if a huge chunk of illegal immigrants were rapists, like Donald Trump was painting them out to be, that doesn't mean you can say all. And that's something I feel like, as someone who opposes illegal immigration, I want to make it clear that we're not talking about Mexicans. We're not talking about people that are south of the border. I'm talking about Canadians. I'm talking about anywhere in the world. If let's say you came from Norway and you're just too lazy to enter legally, somehow you find a way to enter illegally. You didn't do this to save your own skins. You didn't do this to save your life. We're deporting you back to Norway. The only time I would ever deport a citizen is, imagine let's say you became a citizen, right? And you then commit some murder or some sexual assault. I'd say at that point it's justified to deport them at that point. But
okay. I'd agree with that. And also, if they're a criminal in their own country and it's they falsified records to get in, those are the two times I'd be okay, that's fine. But I think the policy of just oh, you fled from Honduras, where the murder rate, the homicide rate is over 100 people for every 100,000 people. Oh, I don't care. I'm still going to send you back to your country or keep you locked up. There's so many immigrants detained, just locked up, rotting away in jail for no good reason.
Yeah, and I disagree, and I don't agree with. I mean, with children, it's remember when DACA ended last year? What Trump was saying, by March 2018, I will end DACA. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, with the kids, it's kids. I mean, despite my hatred of children, despite my absolute hatred and contempt for kids, I absolutely would say I'd be more lenient with kids. Okay, so the stat you're showing, number of beds is 39,000. Number of people detained each year is 360,000. Cost per day is $134 per adult for adult detention, $319 for family detention. The detention budget, which if you can find all these sources and just DM them to me, link them, I'll post them in the description.
I definitely will.
Okay, thanks. The detention budget for 2017 for the fiscal year is $2.6 billion. Number of facilities is 205. Percent of people held in facilities owned by by private companies is more than 73%, which if anyone has been on my channel before, they will know that is something I have a moral quandary with. Number of deaths since 2003 is 184, which obviously the ideal number is 0. I would need to know the circumstances of those 184 deaths. Like if you were dying, if you died from like natural causes, or like if like some accident happens, I don't think anyone's going to really complain.
No. Yeah,
If,
unless it was, say, you died because you had been deprived of food, like you had to sleep on a cold cement floor or something.
I'd say that's mistreatment, not an accident. Like an accident and natural causes, that is one thing. But if it was like murder, suicide, you were attacked and you died from your injuries, or torture or whatever, like someone caused you to die, or it's a suicide, I would say there's a problem and we need to crack down on that type of problem. Well, I gotta stop presenting.
Okay, so I found the source, and normally I don't like NBC News. It's just the statistic they're reporting. So and it provides a link to the thing. I've gone through that, but it's not working on my computer, the PDF. So I have to link to the news story instead.
Okay.
So here we go. The majority of immigrants settling in the United States without authorization are first coming to the country legally, raising questions about the effectiveness of Donald Trump's plan. So the large crossing the border is not the large majority of persons who became undocumented. 2/3 of those who joined the undocumented population did so with entering with a valid visa and then overstayed their period of admission. So I think that kind of like when it's coming to the case where it seems like, you know, we're dealing with like Trump's border wall is dealing with a problem which is just could be solved so much simpler and with spending so much less government money that Americans will have to pay as taxes.
Yeah.
It can be paid so much more humanely and so much less expensively, and he won't even solve the problem he's trying to fix.
Yeah, I think having some leniency, I think there's certain things we change which I think would really end this illegal immigration thing. Imagine there was a flood in Texas, and I use this example with what America is doing with immigration. It's like you take a bucket of water, and you full bucket, and you just throw it away over a fence, but the fence is chain link, so it just flows right back to you. That's what it's basically. You deport all these people, and they get deported 5 or 6 times. It's like, unless you kill them or imprison them, how else are you going to stop them from keep entering the country illegally? If we snip the problem at the bud, not just a border wall, which they could go around the wall easily enough, unless you build a wall all the way around the United States, which no one in their right mind would argue for, then honestly, there's just really no way to really curb that problem. Obviously, the ideal number is 0 illegal immigrants, but obviously that's not possible whatsoever. And when it comes to Trump and his government spending, honestly, he's not really a conservative. They argue for minimal government spending, and the irony is just the irony is delicious, as Bart tries to say. But yeah, so there's not very much disagreement with with the disapproval of what Trump is doing. Now, with overstaying visas, I will say that, you know, I've always found, I wouldn't say more empathy, but I'm more like, oh, you know, like, obviously I'm not going to have a double standard. I'm going to treat you better if you just overstayed your visa. But I think that they'd be first in line with renewing visas, you know. I mean, they'll be the only ones in line to renew visas, you know, or I would want to kind of get rid of visas. I would actually implement a new idea. The visa, for however long, let me Google this really quickly. I should have, because this is a point I've been wanting to make for a long time.
Yeah.
How long if you want to read the chat, you can do so while as I Google visas.
Sure, just a second.
Wanting to make for a long, holy shit. Okay, that was fast. 6 months. I have a theory. I would give someone who gets a visa, 6 months to, be like try and get their stuff in order, like a tax-paying citizen. Like if they're a tax-paying citizen, they're doing everything right. They're doing all these things, like basically what American citizens should be doing to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I would say we're not going to deport you. Honestly, I think, Like if illegal if immigrants are doing that, regardless if they're illegal or not, to me, as long as they're not breaking any, like as long as they're not committing violent crimes, I don't consider border crossing violent. I would say that if you can try and just be a good person, basically, I wouldn't deport you. I wouldn't say you need to go back to wherever you came from, and just those things in general, like that type of thing. So I'd say if you're able to be good for at least 6 months, instead of renewing your visa, to having you take the oath of I think it's the oath of allegiance, or the because I want to make sure I get this correct so I don't like slip up here. The oath of, I think it is allegiance, or for the United States. But it is a tongue twister, so I think that it would be important to have them do that. Yes, the naturalization oath of allegiance to the United States, which I will post that link later on for those who actually want to read that. But it's generally you just swear that you renounce your citizenship, and that type of thing. I don't really even mind people who have double citizenship. I don't really care, honestly, if you have citizenship in 2 or 3 countries. I don't see the problem with that. Now, one point I kind of want to like cover again, because I thought this was a good point, is I do think ICE is becoming like a Gestapo. I think there's better ways, like the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. The Department of Homeland Security covers national security, and I think it did cover immigration. I'm going to Google this again, as I did discuss this with Sparky and DHS, and that type of thing with Department of Homeland Security. It was started it was founded by George W. Bush on November 25th, 2002, and the current secretary is Christian Nielsen. She's the secretary of the DHS. I would say that if we already have an agency, where because like some of these people, like you said with aliens, they treat them like a national security threat, which if that's the case, then why not delegate this to the DHS instead of having an entirely new agency to deal with specifically just immigration?
And not even like the border, like specifically targeting undocumented people in the United States.
Yeah, like to me, it feels like sometimes when I talk to people about ICE and people who are patrolling the borders, like I do feel like sometimes that they kind of see that type of thing as a justification to kind of like bully people, like, oh, they're illegal, therefore, we don't have to care.
So I want to address some of the things that people in the chat brought up. So another thing was about all these dangerous border crossings, like they're getting so bad. Actually, border crossings are at an all-time low. They used to be over almost 2 million people used to cross the United States every year. Now it's about 3,000, and it really started to decline ever since about 2005, and it hasn't really stopped since.
Yeah. That was something I meant to bring up, is that, like I said earlier, I do not view illegal immigrants as a threat. Like I pointed out with people that they're clearly not. For instance, like immigration was decreasing quite a bit under Obama. Well, he has deported more people than any administration in the history of this country. A lot of people were actually returning to Mexico, I think, even on their own volition, or they'd immigrate further to Canada, which to me that's fine. And I do not know enough about Canada's immigration policy or what the politics are in Canada. I don't even know. I can't name any political parties, for instance, so I can't speak to what's going on up in Canada. I hope it's better than the United States, but that's just a hope. I don't know enough to speak about Canada or the UK or any other nation. JJ says in the chat, I just say that you should kick them out of the country, not lock them up in jail. Well, it does cost money to deport them, JJ. I'm going with the more diplomatic rather than the hardcore extreme.
And not only that, you have to track them down, which necessitates a pretty big state, like a pretty big surveillance state, in order to sniff out these individuals that are breaking the law. To me, it seems easier just to provide amnesty and to get the state out of all of that and just have them become a new revenue source, have them become new taxpayers to help, goodness knows America could use more of those,
Yeah.
and less spending on these expensive agencies that aren't really very good at their job and are starting to now like target even legal immigrants.
Abuse their power, become Gestapos, and honestly, I mean, there's a number of government agencies that act like that, and I think that this would be a cheaper because Sparky was talking about fiscal conservatism when it came to building the wall, which I don't really agree with. I don't think it is really fiscally conservative, but I will say that I think this could be a better way to handle it. I think abolishing ICE wouldn't be a problem, considering that they are abusing their power, and I like if anyone has spoken to me for a long time, you'll know that I am opposed to NSA spying,
Yeah.
strongly opposed. And
as you should be. It's like, doesn't it like violate the Fourth Amendment? Like,
I believe so, yes. Also, to any of the NSA people watching, despite me bad-mouthing you, could you please like this video? But yeah, and this was something I've been meaning to bring up as well, is that with ICE doing this type of NSA-esque spying on illegal immigrants, which, okay, this is going to bother me for the rest of the stream if I do not do it right now. Let me see. I think it is the 14th Amendment, which that's what I wanted to bring up earlier, but I didn't remember that it was the 14th Amendment. It was adopted in 1868. I'm going to go and look at what it says verbatim.
okay.
Because this was something I said earlier, and I want to back this up. All persons born or naturalized into the United States, which I'm fine with naturalizing people, in the United States are and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which, I mean, this could get kind of complicated depending on how you determine this. So the 14th Amendment, Section 1, all persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, property, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So it's important to note they say, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, property, yada, 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 nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protections of the law, which that is important to note within Section 1 of the 14th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you could argue that illegal and undocumented aliens, whatever you want to call them, they have, I do believe that they do have the constitutional right to fair due process, which, because of that, I do believe that now it is important to, immigration law, perfect, okay. I'm going to screen share this because this is brought up a lot, so this will be an interesting thing for us to go over. Because me and DarkCon were questioning whether or not this was a part of the Constitution, which, yes, it was. About a year ago.
Within a jurisdiction, aka citizens, tourists would probably fall into that jurisdiction as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 287G, allows ICE to establish increased cooperation and communication with the state and local law enforcement agencies. Section 287G authorizes the Secretary of Homeland Security to enter into agreements with state and local law enforcement agencies permitting designated officers to perform immigration law enforcement functions pursuant to a Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, provided that the local law enforcement officers receive appropriate training and function under the supervision of sworn ICE officials or officers under which I try to keep things decentralized in government power, and this, it kind of, like, I don't have a problem necessarily just in theory with local and federal law enforcement collaborating, but I think that, I don't know, just there's some concerns I might have. Under 287G, ICE provides state and local law enforcement with training and subsequent authorization to identify, process, and when appropriate, detain immigration offenders they encounter during their regular daily law enforcement activity. Which local law enforcement with the training and subsequent authorization which I kind of am curious, like, what standards do you use? Like,
Yeah.
because sometimes I feel like when people are like, they can tell if someone's illegal, it is kind of racist with what they try to do. And speaking of which, this is something what people mention. The program is extremely controversial. It's been widely criticized for increasing racial profiling, which weren't you... actually, I'm going to ask you in the Google Hangout chat. I don't want to make that public what the question will be. But yeah, they mentioned it's increasing racial profiling among police and undermining community safety because unlawful immigrant communities are no longer willing to report crimes or talk to law enforcement.
Well, great.
Which,
isn't that wonderful? How helpful.
yeah. I'm going to ask you the question here. Hang on a second.
To me,
yeah,
it boggles the mind. Why would you want to take money out of your own country and make it your country less safe, and spend billions locking people up to punish these supposed moochers? Oh
yeah,
yeah. We'll address that later.
Yeah,
So
that
I
was something.
also want to address the argument that undocumented immigrants are moochers. Well, look at here. Non-citizen adults are actually, they use like so much less than actual native citizens.
I think that's because they. Yeah, I think that's because they know that if they do use it, that could risk them getting caught. That's just a theory, but yeah.
Yeah, but even when they're naturalized, they still use quite a bit less.
Yes. Okay.
And especially if they were naturalized as a child, we still see almost a $200 disparity. So not only will naturalizing these people, bring in more state revenue, but you're also bringing in people who are much less likely to use welfare. It seems like such a useful thing to have all these hardworking citizens who, are much less likely to use welfare, who are, who would be quite, I think, happy with any party who decided to naturalize them and to offer a more compassionate route. But instead, we have the Republicans acting like, going like really, really like aggressive on this rhetoric, like calling them parasites and invaders and all this sorts of nonsense.
Sparky.
And wasting billions in this crusade that they're never going to be able to win. Same thing with like the drug war. And then we have the Democrats who like say on one hand, oh, look, we're the party of immigrants. But then like under Obama, proceed to deport more than any other administration, or under Bill Clinton, proceed to deprive, make it much harder for these people who might need help to get it, and to create even more border enforcement. Someone in the chat was like, wait, didn't Obama do this? And I think they are assuming, like, when I say far left, I don't mean Democrat. The Democrats are not a far left party.
I honestly, okay, I know this might sound off topic, but I have to agree. Honestly, I think the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Not sorry, but yes. At one point you just mentioned, which I'm so glad you did, because this is something I've been meaning to bring up, because Aspie's mother called me racist for making this point, which I don't understand. Okay, so jobs. There are jobs I mentioned in North Carolina, I believe, and California, like fruit picking, for instance. Those are jobs.
Yeah.
You're not subhuman for taking them. A lot of Americans don't take them. Mm-hmm. Immigrants take them because it's better than no job whatsoever. And I get called racist by Aspie's mother for saying that, even though Americans aren't a race, Mexicans aren't a race. Because, and also that is racist when you think about that. You're assuming all Americans are white or all Mexicans are the same skin color. I think that is quite racist. I can
understand the idea of why it would be racist.
I'm not saying all Americans are refusing to take those jobs. Usually those jobs are underemployed. Not underemployed. Like, first of all, I didn't even say a specific race. I just said Americans. If you assume any skin color, I'd say that the problem of racism might fall onto you. I was only saying Americans, not any single race. If I would have said black people, white people, yeah, I'd be a racist piece of shit. Absolutely. But I only said Americans, which that doesn't, like, I think people need to understand the difference between national origin and skin color. Like, Jesus, like,
although, like, sometimes the term is used
interchangeably.
But even saying Americans are not taking these jobs, a lot of these immigrants are, that's fine. Like, the immigrants are doing this job, if they are provided with amnesty, then the taxes they pay. So why is it a huge deal for Trump to pose a solution? But it's not
Well,
a
the
solution.
solution.
That's like literally our whole point of this discussion has been me trying to say that Trump's so-called solution is paying more for less and targeting a aspect of undocumented immigration that isn't even really the main problem anymore, while creating a whole bunch of racial conflict the United States by giving even more powers to what's essentially at this point a rogue agency.
Mm-hmm.
It's baffling, and it's even more baffling for anyone who would claim to be against big government to support all these institutions which are encroaching in on American civil liberties. And it's especially ludicrous for anyone who claims to be a fiscal conservative who wants to spend billions on locking people up for what reason? Honestly, I'm baffled.
I agree. Like when I say I'm a fiscal conservative, I have no problem. I mean, we have to spend some money. That's obviously a given. Which, oh shoot, I forgot I was on the stream itself. But yeah, I think it's a given. Like we have to spend money, but I want to spend it more sensibly. Like I have no problem putting money in things like infrastructure or things that are severely underfunded. Now, yeah, Red Feather One, Trump's solution is rather a joke, like his dealings with the economy. But I digress. But I thought farmers were racist, and I don't get that. Airport security, I think TSA, I don't really like TSA. I mean, there's been quite a few cases of them.
Once again, I think Red Feather One has kind of thought of me as like this embodiment of liberalism. And so every bad opinion that a liberal will have, I will have. And apparently liberals think farmers are racist. I have met some liberals that fall into classism. They only assume that poor white people are racist. Well, actually, I find like upper middle class white people to be probably the most racist demographic. Not necessarily the poor. And even then, like it's a weird thing to make racism a class problem.
Migration, like that type of thing too. Like, okay, I am back. Geek says I was in a tunnel. Oh. Those things don't even exist in Utah, so I wonder what a tunnel's like. Anyway, yeah, the thing is, holy, Red Feather One's losing his or her or whatever shit in the chat. It's funny. Any person within its jurisdiction, aka citizens in all caps, which is very rational. Well, it said any person, not citizen. If it would have said citizen, that'd be 1 point. Holy shit.
But, like, tourists would fall under that jurisdiction. The tourists are people. In order for this to be true, what Red Feather One is saying, undocumented people would have to not be people.
Yeah, that honestly is just. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in Red Feather One's mouth, but do you think illegal immigrants are people? Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna assume you think so. I'm gonna hope so. But
yeah, like, I'm praying for you.
She needs Jesus. Yeah. Alrighty. But yeah, like even from the age of 6, when I first heard about immigration, I've always found the topic to be like it shouldn't be as controversial as people paint it. I mean, you disagree with me on immigration, or at least slightly in some areas, but you're not going to just blindly call me racist. Well, I hate it.
Yeah, I don't think that the positions you've offered today are racist.
I will say, though,
a hawkish tone on immigration, like, I think a lot of people who do that are under the mistaken impression that it would help solve this problem. In the same way that there are interventionists who are under the mistaken belief that it will solve problems. That's not necessarily racism. However, I will say that there are some people who are hawkish on immigration and undocumented immigration who are racist, who use the issue of immigration as kind of a dog whistle.
Yeah, I do. Same thing with the whole tough on crime thing. It's like that's why I find it hard to talk about immigration with conservatives, because it feels like you mention immigration, empathy goes out the window. It's like, regardless, it's like, I mean, I tend to just view everyone with the same level of empathy. I mean, yes, you'll empathize with people more or less. Obviously, you're not going to empathize with a rapist. You're
No.
not really going to empathize, huh?
Yeah, I don't have very much empathy for rapists.
They can have empathy with a bullet, but that's it. Um, sorry, just my capital punishment, my inner capital punishment is on the rise. But yes, yes, I do believe that it is. Like obviously, merit-based immigration, like this whole thing about race. They throw race and IQ and various subjective nonsense into it. I hated that. When Jared Taylor, when I responded to his video a few months ago, was talking about whites, and he was all going on about how the immigration policy of the 20s or the 60s, like the problem was the immigration policy of the 60s changed, and the immigration policy of the 20s, which if I can find that again, because I'm gonna go over that here, like the immigration policy of the 20s, which I think was signed in by Calvin Coolidge, immigration policy, because immigration really, I think it's always been an issue, but it's become increasingly an issue, in recent years. Like, the most the most conservative I ever got with immigration was this last year. I was like, when I heard about DACA, I'm like, let's give these people a year to get their stuff settled, sorted together, like get paperwork together. After a year, to just deport them, and it's like I don't agree with that really anymore. I think that'd be too difficult to carry out. But
Yeah.
okay, okay, this is what I was talking about. This was the Immigration Act. Let me screen share.
Yeah.
The Immigration Act of 1924, which doesn't surprise me that this dude's ideas are this old. The Johnson-Reed Act, and if I could find the Act of 1965. 1965.
Yeah, that's the
64.
one the alt-right is really big on repealing. They really hate that one.
The Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. And I'm gonna just copy paste that because this was signed in under President Coolidge. Yeah, and and President Johnson signed in the where did I put it? Damn it. Oh, okay. The policy since 1965. Okay. First of all, I don't think skin color is a good determinant of what makes it. This is going to load slowly. I think we can just talk about the general idea. Race-based immigration, like we should have in more whites, I think is absolute horse shit.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for the language, but I think that is the appropriate to call this.
Yeah.
Like if you're a black guy coming from, like if the UK to the US,
yeah,
I think he is just as worthy to come to the country as some white person or some Asian person or some whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so here it is.
It would be foolish to take race into consideration, because that would result in ridiculous situations, such as turning down like more qualified black candidates, or say from Africa, in exchange for like this college dropout from like France or something.
Yeah. By the early 1960s, calls to reform the United States immigration policy had mounted, thanks in no small part to the growing strength of the civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, was based on the quota system since the 1920s under that one act that President Coolidge signed into law. Under which nationality was assigned a quota based on the representation in past U.S. Census figures. The civil rights movement its focus on equal treatment regardless of race or nationality led many to view the quota system as backwards and discriminatory. In particular, Greeks, Poles, Portuguese, and Italians, of whom are increasing numbers, were seeking to enter the United States, claimed the quota system discriminated against them in favor of Northern Europe. Kennedy even took up the immigration reform, though obviously he didn't live long enough to actually get that done.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from him in June 1963. He called it intolerable. Actually, this is not a quote. He just called for it in a speech. Okay, in 2009, DHS's Office of Immigration Statistics estimated the number of unauthorized immigrants in the United States at 10.7 million, down from 11.6 million in 2008. So decline in immigration has coincided with the economic downturn in the United States. I think immigrants are a strong part of the economy. That's why if I'm trying to find a candidate, like if they're saying things like, immigrants are good for the economy, I tend to think they're probably more a pleasant person to vote for, but not just on that sole issue.
Yeah.
But figures were still up from 2000 when around illegal immigrants numbered some 8.5 million. Yeah. History Channel with their ads. But yeah, this whole thing with making it race based, I think you can call it racist. Like it reminds me of race realism. Where people are kind of like thinking that race determines your value as a human. Race realism itself is Nazi eugenics.
Yeah.
Having a race-based immigration policy, I wouldn't call it Nazi-esque because I don't think you could prove that. Oh goodness, are we getting to affirmative action now? No. What? No. Obviously,
to be honest, what we're opposing is affirmative action for whites.
I oppose affirmative action across the board. I don't think anybody deserves affirmative action. Because to me, it kind of this is a bit off topic. I think it can
that's the ridiculous thing. He's putting she, he, they, it,
whatever,
putting words in our mouth. When it comes to affirmative action and where we stand, even though the policy we're talking about right now was affirmative action for white people, basically, in regards to, and specifically Northern Europeans, in regards to the United States.
Yeah. Now affirmative action on immigration. Okay, so for instance, people are kind of calling African nations shithole countries, which, regardless if you think that's true or not, I think it's disrespectful. For those who come from those nations, like if they're able-bodied, or if you're disabled, I don't know how exactly I want to approach this. For able-bodied, capable, able to work, I think we should make determinations on their ability to contribute to society. Yes, disabled people can contribute to society. With the people who are coming, who come from those nations, I think they deserve to have a fair shot, just like if some person comes from Norway. And the funny thing is, people forget, like you said, a college dropout in France, or some idiot from, I don't know, Norway. It's like, just because, obviously it's pretty stupid to expect all Europeans to be kind of smart, and I would say it does kind of play into a bit of a racist tone with, people view Africans as just dumb and, just... That's why I always had a problem with the whole shithole comment from Trump.
Yeah.
But, and saying we should prefer, the real racist comment, in my opinion, was the whole we should prioritize Norway over some African countries.
Yeah. I thought that the liberal media this is getting off topic again, but I will address this quickly. That I thought the liberal media got so obsessed about the obscenity. Ooh, he said shithole, how offensive, that they forgot the real meat of what made what Donald Trump said wrong. And that's, he said, just because you come from a bad country, and all the countries he happened to mention were majority black, maybe we should have less immigrants from there, but we should have more immigrants from good countries, and all the countries he mentioned were white. And specifically Norway, which, is even, kind of Germanic. So right there, you have kind of a racist dichotomy being presented.
Yes, that is the thing. It's like that is what I've seen. Okay, so we've gone into to the latter 8-minute rebuttal perspectives.
I think the problem with this debate is that we agree too much.
Yes, we always choose topics we agree on too much. And then our first debate, when you said there's more agreement than I initially expected. Okay. So if you want to go into closing statements, which I self-criticize, and yes, I look like a fool when I was when I spent my closing statement trying to rebut what she said. So, if you want to go into closing statements, or if you have anything else you want to say, then
Yeah, sure. So I think that I'm glad that Usman and I both agree that the United States needs a radical shift in its approach to immigration. It can't continue to be a country where undocumented immigrants are kind of looked down upon as like these nasty, dangerous, subversive aliens that are out to ruin the country. These people need to be understood as they are, as human beings, and need to be treated as such, and not. Furthermore, undocumented immigration needs a it needs a much better solution, and this solution is quite simple. It involves just three simple steps. One, amnesty for the 12 million undocumented immigrants living in America. Two, the abolishment of the expensive and pointless agency of ICE. And three, allowing more immigrants to come to the United States, while also funding countries that are in states of chaos, and working with the governments in these countries to ensure that their citizens may not have to leave at all, ensuring a proper quality of life can be available to people living in those nations, and working with those governments to end the violence on. And I think when you actually look at the data, it's something so surprising to me that anyone who would call themselves a conservative, anyone who could call themselves an advocate of the Constitution, anyone who could call themselves an advocate of civil liberties, could be against this foolish, misguided, immoral, and yes, sometimes even racist U.S. immigration policy.
okay. So that's your closing?
Yes.
Okay, and okay, so I actually realized while you were saying something, there was a part we didn't cover. There was actually a point we didn't cover. So, if you want me to make my closing, we can do that. But either way,
you should make your closing. We can talk it off air.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll start mine right now. Okay, so throughout this debate, or more cordial discussion, fortunately, it was a cordial discussion in that way. The thing we should keep in mind is that regardless of whether you're a conservative, liberal, or progressive, or like geek and ANCOM on immigration, it's not asking very much to have empathy for people who are of course different from you. Like, I will admit, my old immigration policy of arrest them and immediately deport them, I think, would now probably be unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment. And, you know, things like under the issue of immigration is that, like I mentioned the example earlier, you know, immigrants are quote-unquote flooding, if you don't look at the statistics, they're leaving. But for those who are supposedly flooding into the nation, it's like you put them in a bucket and you throw them over this wall, but they keep flooding in. You know, you don't just keep doing that. You go to where the flood is coming from, and you try and stop it there. Which in Lapis's case, with her idea, which I don't disagree with her solution. I actually very much like the solution. Is we find where the flood is, aka the problem is why the people are leaving their native countries, and we try to solve the problem. Now, you know, sure, even though it's not necessarily our responsibility, if you really care about this immigration issue, let's help those countries to where people can stay in their own countries, and they can just, you know, live just like you and I do in our native countries. You know, even if they're not from their native countries, I think just being able to live just like any other person is a goal we all strive for, although, of course, we have our different means to which we want to get to the end of that goal. Another interesting... Oh, Lord. Sorry, chat. Obviously, that's not what Lapis said, but anyway, I'll bite it. That's the thing with... We can't stereotype illegal immigrants the same way we don't normally allow people to stereotype anyone else. You know, because those stereotypes, there's no justification for stereotyping anything. And I'll be closing in just less than 20 seconds, but even though I have 2.5 minutes, I want to solve the immigration issue, as this is a controversy that I don't think is ever going to go away. But I'd like to make it easier to quell the controversy and not have people suffering. And as a libertarian, even if I did have a conservative leaning on immigration, it's more we should be compassionate with our immigration policy. We should be compassionate with our fellow citizen, our fellow man, regardless, even if they're not from our country. We bleed the same skin color. We live on the same planet. I want to make sure that people are not going to mistreat you just because you crossed that border. And that is where I'll be wrapping it up at less than 1:50 on the timer, and I'll call that a close. So, with our opening statements out of the way, to you, Lapis, thank you again for proposing the idea of the stream. I'm very sorry that twice we had to delay it. But it's good that this conversation was carried out and it was productive and healthy.
Sorry, my little sister came into my room.
It's all
yeah.
good.
It has been great talking to you, S-Man. And even though the chat may have been somewhat against both of us, I hope that the information presented and the arguments presented have helped change people's minds a bit about the common narratives that are accepted in the United States about undocumented people, and even in my country too.
Yeah, I just hope that I hope the people that have watched, I hope, even if they think you're wrong, it's like, or both of us are wrong or whatever, I just hope they at least they're more open-minded and take into account the information, and they don't just dismiss it and call it liberal propaganda or whatever, because regardless, at the end of the day, I think that, it's always good to have a nuanced conversation on immigration and that type of thing. And just again, thank you for proposing the idea, and thank you for joining me. And to everyone who who listened while it's live, or who will watch in the future, thank you for joining the two of us. And that's where we'll wrap it up. And I hope you all have a good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you're at. Just thank you, and yeah, I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.